My name is Christos Papadimitriou. I'm a professional soccer player here in Austria and a Transition Coach Trainee for Athlete Zone. Our guest today is Taj Dazon, a former college football player and the transition coach for the organization. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about your sporting career?
Sure, Christos. First of all, thank you for having me, man. It's an honor to be here with you. Just to think when we connected earlier this year and think about where we are now, it's exciting to see where you're at, man. So it's a pleasure to be doing this interview with you. As you mentioned, I played college football at Stony Brook University, and I knew I wasn't going to the NFL, so that wasn't even on the radar for me. Yet, like many former athletes, I had no idea what I was going to do next, mainly because I didn't take the time to prepare for it. I just kind of figured that everything would work itself out like it always had because I was a football star. So after my football career, I came home, was extremely lost, had no idea what I wanted to do next, and just really struggled to find my way. I didn't know what I was interested in outside of football. I didn't know what kind of career path I wanted to go down. I just kind of chose my major in college because it was easy, you know, so I had no idea what I was going to do with it. And obviously that led to a series of challenges for me that many athletes face, not just with my identity, but just my life direction and all that type of stuff. And down the road, I eventually, after having some career success in sales and recruiting, decided that I was going to dive into being a transition coach. Basically, I wanted to be the person that I needed in my corner when I was going through the challenges of the transition. And that's led to some wonderful opportunities, obviously being partnered with Athlete Soul now as a transition coach. And I've been able to help a lot of people and do a lot of great things.
Amazing to hear that. So how did you feel like during your transition? Did you experience some mental hurdles?
Very challenging, Christos. I mean, I spent 4 years on a scholarship, right? I'm from California. I spent 4 years in New York, just kind of living the life, you know, obviously being on a full ride, everything was taken care of. I had my own place, living with some of my teammates. And to come back home to my childhood bedroom with no job prospects, no income, you know, no idea of what I was going to do was extremely challenging for me. So I definitely went through a long period of depression, of anxiety, just because not only was I frustrated with my situation, but I felt like I was in a dark hole because I had no idea how I was going to get out of my situation. So to answer your question, just from a mental perspective, it was very, very challenging. It took me a long time to get out of that. And I think honestly, that's what, you know, working with former athletes now and helping them through their transition, having gone through that is what allows me to relate to them while they're going through that and being able to kind of guide them out of that.
It's amazing because also I am an athlete and I did have some issues like this. And as an athlete and from the culture that I'm coming from, seeking out for help, it's not so common. In the beginning, I did try to find someone to help me. Then I realized that he wasn't the right person for me because he didn't really understand me, even though he had all the degrees. And then with the time, I started to checking a little bit like what is available on internet. Just participating in some development courses and reading books and watching motivational videos, and slowly starting building my self-esteem and my confidence in order to get back where I was, in the vision that I had. So I guess it is very important, or if you had the chance to choose someone to support you during your transition, would you do it? And if you would do it, who would be this person?
I really like what you said about at the beginning where you said asking for help isn't very common. And I think that the example that you set, or the example that I set, because eventually I started reaching out to people for help too. I think that that's huge, that athletes should really heed your words of wisdom there, that you need to be reaching out for help and finding people who can guide you. So at the time when I was going through my transition, there was no Athlete Soul, you know, there were no transition coaches. And like you said, I would reach out to people every now and then, but they didn't really get it. So to answer your question, I would reach out to people who had been in my shoes, you know, a team of former athletes, people who had gone through the transition and were now successful in their businesses, in their careers, and doing great things. Those would be the people that I would have reached out to back then, so I could not only get through the transition, but figure out, okay, how can I carve out a new lane for myself? How can I be successful after my sport?
This role as an athlete would not play anymore in your life, like this identity. How did you feel?
Very frustrated, only because, well, I put it like this. A lot of athletes, when we're done playing our sport, we still have that drive inside of us. You know, it doesn't just go away. Just because you can no longer put on the jersey and compete, you know, you're still a competitive person. You still want to be the best version of yourself in some capacity. And I think it's important to be able to apply that to the right thing. Because a lot of athletes who have no guidance, right? If you're not working with someone to help you get clear on what you want, a lot of athletes just kind of fall into things, which I did. So I was doing jobs, I was chasing money just to make ends meet. And yes, I would be great. I was producing great results, but I was unsatisfied because I was applying all this energy, all this ambition, all that drive as an athlete to the wrong thing. So even though I was getting results, I wasn't satisfied on the back end. But to answer your question, it's yeah, I think that when I really think about myself, that was the most frustrating part, is not having anything to apply it to. So once I could find a cause, which is helping other former athletes get through their transition, that changes everything, because now I wake up every day and I'm still able to take that go-getter mentality as an athlete and apply it to something I believe in. And that's where you start to see the results come in and the impact being made.
As athletes, we're also like, we have this identity that we have been developing all over during our career. And then we end up in a point that if it is taken from us, then what are we, you know? Without having developed some interest during our career, then we end up in a point that we don't know what we want. And that's the thing, like we developed a lot of skills that could be implemented in the life after sports, but we haven't really see what kind of skills do we have, where we are good at, and how we could transfer into the life after sports during also the pandemic, that we are not allowed to train anymore. And to be able to train alone, it is hard, because you don't have your teammates, you don't have this team spirit, and you have to keep moving yourself all the time and motivating yourself how to do it. But rather than that, they feel like frustrated because they don't have things to fulfill their days. And that's a little bit like I see them, they are kind of struggling a little bit on that. What, for example, during your experience, what kind of transferable skills did you see that you have now, and you have this from sports?
It's just having that go-getter mentality, having the drive, having the discipline. And you touched on something that's so important, Christos, because you talked about that lack of community, right? Not having your teammates around you, not having, you know, people in the locker room with you, or people supporting you or pushing you, having to train by yourself, not having that community of people where you're on a similar path. And to me, the transferable skills were to kind of be able to create that for myself, because at a certain point, I realized I couldn't just exist in a vacuum and be the lone wolf forever. I was going to need people to run with, right? So me having that discipline, or even to be able to create structure, because I think athletes thrive in structure. And like you said, when you're done playing the sport, there's no structure around you, so you almost have to create the structure. So back to your question about transferable skills, I think I had to identify what I was missing first, and then be able to take the transferable skills to go create those things for myself. So prime example, I realized I was missing community, or people who were on the same mission. So I use my athletic go-getter mindset to, I'm going to wake up every single day and just reach out to as many people as possible who are doing something similar. That's how I connected with Miriam. That's how I connected with Athlete Soul. That's how you connected with Athlete Soul, because you woke up and you were applying your go-getter mindset to connect with people who are doing something similar too. You and I connect, and now here you are. Now you have a team that you can run with. Structure is important too. You mentioned, like, you have to be able to go train and do things on your own when there's no one blowing the whistle for you, making you do it. You have to do that for yourself. And that's taking the athletic mindset and being able to say, okay, no one's making me do this. I'm going to do this on my own. So those are just, I mean, there's many transferable skills, man. We could talk for hours about all the transferable skills, but those are two of the main ones that come to mind for me.
And that's so beautiful, because we are playing a sport and we don't realize what kind of effect it has on our lives. And then we see that when we are in a dark place, and then we are seeking out for finding some new purpose in life. So if you had the chance to look back at your sporting career, and you had the chance to change things, would you do something differently?
Yes, and that's a very interesting topic that you bring up, because a lot of people say that with an athlete, especially someone like yourself, right? You play professionally. So when athletes are pursuing a professional career, a lot of people will say, hey, you need to be prepared for life afterwards. And all of that is great. At the same time, it can be very difficult to prepare because you're waking up every day. You're 100% dedicated to being the best at your craft. And a lot of people see it as having a plan B and not being focused on plan A, which is making it professionally or whatever that looks like. So the advice that I would give or something that I would do differently, is realize that it's going to end anyway, right? Even people who are striving to play professionally, you have to understand it's not about taking away from your focus, being a professional. It's about just thinking about what your life is going to look like, because it has to end. Not that you're saying, oh, I don't think I'm going to make it, so I'm going to plan for something different. It's saying, no, I'm going to make it. And at the same time, I'm going to be prepared for the rest of my life, And what I would have done differently, I think, is just get a lot more clear or start researching people. That would be a major one. Because if you don't know what you want to do, kind of looking at people who are role models or people who you might aspire to be like, that can be very helpful when you're saying, I like not what this person does, necessarily their job title, that's part of it, but what kind of life is that person living? Like, what kind of impact do they have on people? What do they wake up every single day and do? So I think I would have identified more people like that during my playing days to say, this is what this person is doing after their athletic career, and I want to do something similar. Not even athletes, but just people in general. And I would have studied more people and seen what their lives were like, so I could emulate those qualities, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So you would be more like as an observer and see what other people are doing in order to get a better insight maybe. As a professional athlete in general, we are only told to do things in sports, but we are afraid to try out new things. And that's also when, for example, something is going wrong in sports, then affects all the other areas of our lives. And that's a little bit the thing. Why not the plenty free time that we have as athletes? Why not to invest this time on finding new interest or just trying out things in order to develop like another identity of as an athlete?
Yeah, Christos, especially now, right? Especially with seasons being postponed or delayed or seasons being canceled. I'm glad you touched on that, because it's not the time to sit around and play video games. It's not the time I know a lot of people are quarantined, but it's not the time to go out drinking with your friends right now. It's not the time to just waste time. And I love that you said invest time, because there's a big difference between investing time and spending time. Most people go through life spending time. I stopped spending time years ago. There's every moment, every single second has to be an investment. Even us being on this call right now is an investment of time, because the conversation we're having is going to help people. We're not just on here, oh, let's hang out on Zoom. We're here making an investment of all of our time to help people. So I really like that you touched on that, man. I think if more athletes can realize that their free time, of course, you have to rest, relax, and recover so you can train and all that stuff too. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it's invaluable to be able to invest the free time, right? It's not really free time, but invest that time to be able to do something powerful with it later in your life. We only get a short period of time on this earth, so you want to make sure you make every second count.
And I think also the best investments are the ones we are doing on ourselves. And the outcome we have, we are growing as people, we are growing our minds, and that's the feeling that you have later on. I guess it's an amazing feeling. I see it also for myself when I reflect back on my life, and I see how I am now and how I used to be. I am really proud because I did the work that is hard. It's not easy, and but once the work is done, then you realize that you have this self-confidence that comes from the right place, I would say.
Absolutely. You should be proud, man. I'm proud of you. Like you said, Christos, we have that confidence because we know we put in the work. When no one was making us do it, when it was late at night, when it was early in the morning, we know that we put the work in, and that's why we can be confident in what we do and what we're going to do, because we earned it and we continue to earn it every day.
And sometimes we tend to see the result, but we forget that the most important, I would say, is the process and the small wins that we're going to have in this process.
That's another great point you bring up, Christos, because I was having a conversation the other day, man, and this guy was asking me, he was like, why do you think athletes have such a hard time celebrating themselves with the small wins? And the conversation led to us talking about how, we're always on the go. We're always trying to achieve. So sometimes we don't stop to honor the process, like you said, and celebrate the small wins. And it's funny, man, because that's even something I've been trying to incorporate in my life. I have all these big goals and all these things I want to hit. and then, you know, I accomplish a goal and I'm on to the next thing, versus being like, man, that was great, Taj. Like, celebrate that you even accomplished that, or where you're at right now versus where you were a few months ago or a few years ago. So I think it's important for any athletes tuning in right now to listen to Christos' his words and really celebrate yourself and focus on those small wins, and yeah, just be proud of those accomplishments too, so you don't get so caught up in chasing the next thing without stopping to appreciate where you're at right now.
What are you doing now? I know that you have an amazing podcast. Also, that's how I found out about your mission and purpose. Thrive After Sports, it's the name
Yes,
of your
sir.
podcast. And tell us about a little bit, like, how is your daily life look like?
It's quite busy, but it's very fulfilling. As you mentioned, I have the podcast, Thrive After Sports. I started that a little over a year and a half ago because I realized that I can't reach everybody through my coaching. I can only do so many coaching calls in a day. So let me put out some information that can help people be coached indirectly. It's the same reason I'm coming out with the book. My book is also called Thrive After Sports. That'll be out before Christmas time this year. And same philosophy. I wanted to just create a different method to be able to have an impact on people. A typical day for me looks like waking up. I wake up around 6. Sometimes I might sleep in. It might be like 6:30, and then I get up and get my workout in. And then from there, I'm just I have like some meditation time, and then I'm right on phone calls. I have a few coaching clients that I work with every month, so I do phone calls with them. And then what else? I try to record a podcast episode. I'm facilitating a few projects right now. I just have it's funny, Christos, because a few years ago, the life that I'm living right now is basically the life that I created for myself. You know, I envisioned this. I wanted to be able to work from anywhere in the world, have an impact on people through the content I'm putting out and through my coaching, be partnered with great organizations that are doing the same thing, which is why, you know, I'm so excited, like, to have connected with Miriam, to have connected with Athlete Soul, and to be able to not only do my own coaching, but be able to coach and be a part of a team of other people who are doing the same thing. But yeah, man, that's what my day looks like. I'm also partnered with a publishing company now, self-published in 30 days. It's the same company that helped me put my book out. So what I'm really focused on with my role is just seeing all the doors that putting my own story out there in book format, and all the different opportunities that come from writing a book and people taking interest in you being an author. I want to give that to other athletes and other people doing great things in the world. So I'm also helping my clients and just athletes who I've connected with over the years. I'm helping them publish books, leverage their books for speaking engagements or even virtual speaking engagements, and just leaving a legacy, you know, telling their story and having an impact on other people. Because a book, you know, you can't close the tab on a book. You know, you can't like turn it off. A book is forever. It's either sitting on your shelf. Even if no one ever reads your book, the book is sitting on the shelf and people are going to look at it and think about you or think about your message and your mission. So
also, like, you are going to publish your own book, and there is also hard work behind this success. And I would like to touch a little bit on that. How hard it is to write a book, because you were a college athlete. And did you imagine that one day you're going to have your own book?
I did not, man. That wasn't even on my radar until a few months ago. So I always thought that I would write a book when I was old and gray, you know, like once I made it to the mountaintop, I would write a book just to, like, you know, for the grandkids or something. Like, this is my legacy piece, and leaving people a trail of breadcrumbs. And then it's funny, when you're trying to help someone, you end up helping yourself. So long story short, I had a client and he wanted to write a book. So I looked into my network. You know, me and you, Christos, we're networking guys. So I'm like, who's in my network that I can help this guy get a book done? So I connected with the company, Self-Published in 30 Days, and the #1 self-publishing company in the world. I reached out to the founder. I helped my client do the book. He sees me and he's like, hey, I see a lot of myself in you. I want to help you. And I was looking for a business mentor at the time too. So he becomes my business mentor. And of course, owning a publishing company is like, you got to write a book. You have a great story. It can impact a lot of people. So I wrote the book. And yeah, man, that's how it came about. And it wasn't hard. To your first point, like, a lot of people think writing a book, it has to take years. They have a great process at the company that I was able to follow. And that's why I'm able to help other people do that now. It only took me 3 months to write the book. And it's not like, you know, some small little thin book. It's an actual serious book. And I wrote it in 3 months because they basically had me break down the process, right? I'm already doing coaching, so that made it easy. I have a coaching curriculum similar to Athlete Soul that helps athletes transition. So I just was able to put that in book format where I focused on one topic per week, sent it in, they edited it, and I did that so on and so forth for like 2 months straight. And by the time 2 months passes by, I have about 10 chapters. And from there, all there was to do was edit it. So I wrote the book in 3 months. Like, it was that simple. And I'm really excited about it, man, because I know that people are going to be able, just like the podcast, people are going to be able to pick up the book and be able to read it and have a lot of help that I didn't have, that we didn't have, through our transition. So.
And I see that is also very important, like the people that you are surrounded, And I remember that I was in Sweden when I was listening one of your podcasts, and you mentioned that even though we might have the distance between ourselves and the other people, using the internet properly, you can have the right mentor. And I think you touched on this point in one of your podcasts, and I found really interesting because I don't need to wait to get a mentorship from someone that lives in the United States, for example. I can just go on internet and just starting checking out and find a bit more information, even if maybe they are selling a course, and I could get directly having a mentor like this that would help me tomorrow in my life.
Absolutely, man. Just the fact that you were listening to my podcast in Sweden just blows my mind. You know what I mean? Like I've never been to Sweden, so it's just crazy to think that people in Sweden are listening to my podcast. But so you touched on virtual mentors. That's something that I definitely believe in. I talked about this when I was on the Feed the Soul event, the Athlete Soul panel discussion, and I'm a huge believer in that in the times we're living in, you would be a fool not to start reaching out to people or connecting with people who can guide you, even if it's indirectly, like you said. So you don't necessarily need to be on the phone with someone every day. If you can find a mentor who's willing to do that, whether you're paying them or not, or paying for consulting or just having someone guide you, then by all means do that. But even just following people's work, just listening to their podcast, absorbing their content, reading their books, reading their blogs, we live in a time where there's no excuse to not be learning from people who you feel like you can learn from. If someone, like, I'm the type of person where if I like what someone's doing and I'm inspired by this person, either through their work or just who they are as a human being, then I'm going to absorb every piece of content that they have. I'm going to find everything they've ever done in their career, and I'm going to absorb it so that I can incorporate that into my life. And yeah, man, there's no substitute for virtual mentors. If you like, obviously, I think you need to have both. You need to have people that you're connected with, that you're spending time with, that you're speaking with, and then have people that you're learning from indirectly.
How important is, like, okay, once you have started absorbing this content, how important is the implementation? Because we hear that, we read books, we listen to podcasts, but when it comes to play mood, then everybody's like scared to try. What do you think about it?
Implementation is huge, right? I'm glad you touched on that. Like, as athletes, when do we ever learn something and not implement it? What sense would that make for us to be in the film room, or the coach is going over something over the board, and then you just go out there and do the same stuff that you've been doing? Like, so the same philosophy applies in life. Whatever you're learning, you have to apply it. And just like in sports, like, you want to apply it as quickly as possible. You don't want to just accumulate all this information and then it's like, all right, it's been a month of me with the door closed in my room reading books and absorbing information. Now I'm going to go try it. Like, anytime I learn something, I try to apply it the same day. Even if I'm watching a podcast or watching a video or listening to a podcast or reading a book, my notepad is there so that I can write it, so that I can implement it. And then whatever I wrote down, I'll review those notes and then go try to implement some of that into what I'm doing. So to your point, man, yeah, you can't just accumulate all this knowledge and be learning from people without applying it. Bruce Lee said, knowing is not enough, we must apply. Willing is not enough, we must do. That's one of my favorite. I used to have that poster in my old apartment, man. So yeah, man, you gotta implement, man. I'm so glad you brought that up.
And I think that's also the way to go, because without implementation, if we get into this mindset of making assumptions and not try things out, and because we're afraid that a failure might come, then at the end we will never find out what is on the other side, even if we don't try. And that's the
right.
same in sports, that's the same in business, in every industry, I would say.
Yeah, 100%, man.
So if you have any advice, for example, for athletes, that how could they be better prepared in life after sports? What would you say?
I would say it's everything we've talked about up until this point. So number one, spend some time, invest the time in yourself. And that could look like a bunch of different things. I highly recommend getting clear on what you actually want, almost like dreaming into the future. So thinking about, like, for example, when I was playing football, I never thought of myself as, okay, I'm just going to come home and be broke and not have a job. Or my first job, I'm just going to be sitting in a cubicle all day being miserable, right? I wasn't creating a vision for myself. So I just kind of ended up in these situations that I didn't want to be in. So my number one piece of advice is get clear on what you want, and find someone who can help you do that as well. You know, reach out to Athlete's Hope, reach out to Miriam, reach out to me, reach out to Christos. Like, just get connected with people who have gone through the transition and figured out what they wanted to do. And then spend time writing to get clear on what you want as you're connecting with these people, or even before you connect with these people. And then, like we talked about, learn about yourself. Learn about people that you aspire to be like, and implement the things that you're learning. Try them out in your own life. Another thing would be that I would really get, this is a message I really try to drill home to former athletes or to athletes, is to not be so concerned about the money, because the money's always going to be there. Really get clear on your mission and figure out what you want your actual lifestyle to be like. And eventually, as you're continuing to put in work, the money starts to catch up to what you're doing. Because if you're chasing money right away, you're probably going to be ended up in a position where you're just doing things for money versus doing things that make you excited. And yes, that money comes right away, but long term, when you're doing something you enjoy doing, it takes a little longer for the money to come. But when the money comes, when it rains, it pours in a good way. The money starts coming in because of, like we talked about, the work that you put in over time, that starts to catch up. So that's huge. And then there's no shame in, you know, working a job just to pay your bills while you're spending time doing something that you really enjoy. I've worked many jobs, while I was building my way up and building a reputation for being a coach. So yeah, man, I know I threw a lot in there, but that's some general advice I would give.
And I love this point that you made, that you said that if you do something, if you manage to have a life where you earn your money from doing something that you love, I would say that that's a double win. That is like it's another feeling that goes to another dimension. Like you know that you wake up with a purpose, that has an impact on other people's life, and that's a feeling that I would say that cannot be replaced.
100%. There's no substitute for it. You know, a few years ago when I quit my job, I went broke. I had to move back in with my parents, and I wasn't making any money doing what I'm doing. But I was like, I'm willing to do this and be broke for as long as it takes, because I know once I hit that point where I'm at now, where I'm able to wake up and get paid for doing things that I enjoy, there's no substitute for that. Like, my only goal in life after a certain point, after I did the whole, just struggling and chasing money, I was like, I want to get paid to be myself. That's it. I just want to wake up and only do what I enjoy. Obviously, not that I'm just going to sit back and, drink margaritas on the beach, because I like doing that too. But, at a certain point, wake up to help people by being myself and sharing my experiences. And yeah, man, there's no substitute for that type of lifestyle. To get paid to do what you enjoy. And it's such a small percentage of people who are able to do that, because not everyone has the patience to be able to put in the work to reach that point. A lot of people are just comfortable. Well, I have to get money. I have to do what I have to do. Like, okay, you can do that, but it's going to take, you're going to have to make some sort of sacrifice if you really want to, leave your mark in this world and live a life that you really enjoy, not just enjoying the weekends. But let me get off my soapbox. We don't even need to go into all that, man.
I find it interesting also, like, considering the circumstances we have due to the pandemic, and I don't know exactly how it is in the United States, but here in Europe, many countries were experiencing lockdowns, and mostly the athletes or people are spending time at home where they are not used to spend their time like this. So what would you recommend? How should they spend the time? What should they invest their time?
Yeah, invest that time in and it's the same here in the US. We're quarantined. We can't be in social gatherings, but invest that time in just learning, just growing. I mean, you have to. It's like we were talking about earlier. You have to find things that light you up, not necessarily outside of your sport, because there might be something related to your sport that you might want to do. But find things that light you up and invest that time to become the best version of yourself and to start dreaming and visualizing, like we talked about, what you want to do after your sport. You know, I don't think I touched on this yet. I think it's important to dream bigger than just being a coach or something like that, right? Because a lot of athletes who I encounter, at first they say they want to be a coach, you know, and that a lot of times, not that some athletes don't make great coaches, but a lot of times the people don't consider other things. They're just like, you know, oh, I played soccer all my life. I played football. I played baseball all my life. So I want to be a coach. Like,
yes,
it's an easy fix to something that they actually might want to spend time investing in and thinking about what they want to do. So just to wrap it up, my advice to those people who are quarantined and stuck inside right now, of course, invest that time thinking about what you want to do afterwards and connecting with people who can help you get there and learning and growing, but also think big. Like, don't sell yourself short. You know, don't just go with what's easy and comfortable. Invest that time coming up with something that's true to you, that you can actually be excited about waking up and pursuing every single day.
I love this point, and based on what you said, like having a clear vision, having a big goal at the end, but also setting out like what you need to make in order to get this goal. It is also very important. And as we spoke also before, that like these small wins that we might need to have, and we might need to have to put this hard work in order to reach this big goal that everybody should have. And as you said, like using this time in order to find what is our purpose and what we want to achieve maybe in life.
Absolutely.
And I love your point and I love your advice, and thank you for this fantastic conversation. Thank you for taking the time and to share your knowledge and wisdom with us. And to all of you that you're gonna watch the recording, you can find all the information about us and Athlete Soul, and we encourage you to reach out if you need any further assistance.
Awesome. Christos, thank you for having me, man. Fantastic conversation. Shout out to Miriam for putting this together. Shout out to Athlete Soul. This was awesome.